One more last chance. Trump will call the president of the Russian Federation once again, and after that, he will impose sanctions. Meanwhile, Zelensky has invited Putin to Kyiv for negotiations. Zakharova got into a spat with Svyrydenko on social media. The Ukrainian armed forces are advancing in Donbas. Syrskyi revealed how much territory has been regained, and Russia attacked one of the largest thermal power plants in Ukraine. The military uncovered corruption schemes in the Kyiv Territorial Recruitment Center. Moscow has run out of gasoline. A 15-year-old IT specialist has become the first saint of the new millennium. I'll tell you all the details later in this episode. My name is Katerina Kolhan. Let's start this informational Monday together. The most powerful power plant in the Kyiv region, Trypilska, came under a massive drone attack last night. This is being reported in local online communities. Power outages are being reported in the capital and the region. The Ministry of Energy stated that the Russian army attacked one of the thermal power facilities in the Kyiv region, but did not specify which one. At the moment, specialists are working to eliminate the consequences of the shelling. U.S. Presidential Special Representative Kellogg stated that the attack on Kyiv does not indicate Russia's intention to end the war through diplomatic means. He believes that Russia escalated the war by striking a government building in the capital. He wrote about this on social media platform X and noted that 2 weeks ago he was in that building with the country's Prime Minister, Yulia Svyrydenko. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zakharova commented on the strike on the government building. She did this directly under Svyrydenko's post on social media. She wrote that it was a precise, well-aimed strike at the heart of the Ukrainian terrorist regime. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports that during the nighttime attack, Russian drones broke through the strongest section of Ukraine's air defense, the government quarter, which is located at the very center of the defensive ring and is considered the most protected area in the country. Trump stated that in the coming days he will have a conversation with Putin.
You plan to speak to President Putin next about this over the next couple of days?
The US president also announced his readiness to implement a second round of sanctions against Russia. US Treasury Secretary Bessent clarified that the new measures are intended to cause the complete collapse of the Russian economy and force Putin to negotiate. But for this, the active participation of European partners is needed. They are expected to visit the US in the coming days. Trump announced their visit to the White House on Monday or Tuesday to discuss a peace agreement regarding Ukraine. He believes that no one has been tougher on Russia than he has, and he is not satisfied with what is happening.
No one has been tougher on Russia than I have. This concerns the pipeline, as you know, Nord Stream 2, and many other things. But I am not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with the whole situation. You know, it's interesting. It doesn't affect us because these aren't our soldiers, but they are losing. I told you 5,000. They're losing 7,000. Between Ukraine and Russia, 7,000 soldiers every week. It's such a terrible waste of humanity. So no, I'm not thrilled about what's happening there, I'll tell you. I think it will be resolved. So I would resolve 7 wars. This one, I would say, might be the easiest of all to settle. But with war, you never know what you're going to get.
Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that he is ready to meet with Putin, but not on Russian territory. He said he would not go to the capital of the terrorists while his country is under daily rocket attacks and strikes. And in response to Putin's statements, he said that Putin could come to Kyiv for negotiations. Zelensky regrets that Ukraine was not represented at the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska.
I said, listen very carefully, Mr. President. I am absolutely ready for any meeting, but certainly not here in Russia. Any meeting, whether bilateral or trilateral, would be great if you are there.
This is an interview for American ABC News, so you are hearing Zelensky's words with translation. The president of Ukraine also said that the main guarantee of security is a strong Ukrainian army. To stop the war, pressure must be put on Putin, including by restricting access to energy resources, which are his weapon. He emphasized that any agreements with Russia make the fight against the aggressor less effective. And as long as Putin has not occupied Ukraine, Ukraine is winning, Zelensky believes. Ukraine is capable of defending itself for another 2 to 3 years. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. The Russian offensive in the spring and summer resulted in minimal territorial gains. However, Moscow aims to exhaust Ukraine into capitulation rather than seize territory. Resistance depends on Western supplies of weapons, ammunition, and the development of domestic production. A critical issue is the shortage of personnel. The article states that Ukrainian defense relies on mines, artillery, and drones to strike Russian forces. Meanwhile, our defenders continue to heroically reclaim every inch of Ukrainian land from the occupiers. The fighters of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment, Syrskyi, have completely liberated the village of Syrskyi in Donetsk region and established control over it. Additionally, the day before, the armed forces of Ukraine cleared the settlement of Volodymyrivka in Donetsk region of occupiers. This was reported by Deep State. Ukrainian forces repelled the enemy near the villages of Razino, Zolotai Kolodiaz, and Novotoritske. At the same time, Russian troops advanced in the Serebryansky forestry area. More details about what is happening on and around the front can be found in the report.
Ukrainian Defense Forces repelled 170 attacks in just the past day. Our command admits the autumn phase of the Russian offensive has begun. The occupiers have only a few months left to improve their positions before winter.
Obviously, the objective in this regard is as follows: to try to enter major Ukrainian cities, specifically Pokrovsk, in particular Kostiantynivka, as well as Dobropilya and Mirnohrad. If we are talking about the Lyman direction, the Syrskyi direction, this is also in order to try to spend another military winter in urban combat, because obviously fighting in the open field will be much more difficult. It is clear that the Ukrainian Defense Forces do not agree with this.
However, this time Russia decided not to spread its forces along the entire front line, but to systematically apply pressure at a single point. Having failed to achieve their objectives set for the summer, the Russian command has now decided to reinforce the Donetsk direction by sending additional troops there.
It is clear that the Pokrovsk direction truly remains a priority. The Donetsk region remains the main priority. This is indeed the primary strategic objective that the Russian forces ultimately failed to achieve during their much-anticipated so-called major summer offensive.
At the same time, the Russian command has apparently realized that Pokrovsk cannot be taken with small assault groups. And now, after months of conserving equipment, the Ukrainian armed forces have started to spot it more and more often in this direction. However, the infantry still isn't being provided with armored vehicles. On the other hand, there has been an increase in artillery.
They are also bringing in heavy equipment there, among other things. The people fighting there note that there are a lot of self-propelled artillery systems of various modifications which are carrying out artillery strikes, in addition to drones and everything else we already know about.
However, in order to gather thousands of new soldiers under the long-suffering Pokrovsk, they had to be redeployed from other directions, since Russia simply has no unused reserves left, analysts say. In the conversation, this was called the largest rotation. In reality, the occupiers are simply being brought to Donetsk region to replace the eliminated assault groups.
Where are the troops being withdrawn from? Not from the rear of the Russian Federation. They don't have any kind of untouchable reserve in the rear. These are troops that are being moved along the front line. And in fact, they're being moved from the Kherson direction and from the Sumy direction. So this so-called rotation is most likely not really a rotation at all.
After months of wearing down their units against the defenses of Pokrovsk, the Russian military leadership decided to bypass the city from the flanks and simultaneously attempt to capture major logistical centers of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Let's not forget, of course, the Novopavlivka direction of the front, which is also one of the most active. This is the southern border of Donetsk Oblast, the administrative border, and Donetsk Oblast itself. It is clear that there too the enemy is trying, by threatening the Huliaipol direction, which is already in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, to also advance along the left southern flank toward Pokrovsk.
At the same time, the Ukrainian General Staff reports that these enemy attempts have not been successful. On the contrary, due to the reduction of enemy forces in the north and south of the front line, our troops managed to advance both in Zaporizhzhia and Sumy regions. Despite the fact that the front in Sumy region is moving toward the Russian border, it is not coming easily at all.
Assault operations are taking place here constantly on a regular basis. The enemy is very actively using infantry and lately has been using various drones even more intensively. These include FPV drones, regular radio-controlled ones, FPV on fiber optics, Molniya drones, and other types of unmanned aerial vehicles. They are constantly carrying out fire strikes on frontline positions, including those in the rear. Therefore, the fact that the front line in this direction remains relatively static is precisely thanks to the effective work of our units.
Analysts emphasize in Russian documents, it's the opposite. The Kremlin reports constant successes. That's why the General Staff believes that troops from there can be redeployed to Pokrovsk. In reality, however, these fake reports only lead to the occupiers losing more territory and their own soldiers.
The enemy's fake reports about security zones in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions are nothing more than an attempt to cover up the failure of an operation that ended in a deadlock and tens of thousands of losses for them. This year alone, in the operational zone of the Kursk military district, our soldiers have eliminated 19,080 enemy fighters, and more than 25,000 have been wounded.
The Russians are also not seeing any success in the south. Having sent part of their units to the Pokrovsk direction, those who remained are suffering a complete fiasco. In particular, according to reports from the Ukrainian command, 57 units of Russian weaponry and equipment have been destroyed there over the past 2 days.
The commander of the reconnaissance platoon of the 28th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, with the call sign Rotan Krymsky, spoke about corruption schemes in the Kyiv Territorial Recruitment Center. On his social media, he wrote that his acquaintance was detained near his home, quickly sent to the Military Medical Commission, and then directed to the assembly point to await assignment. And for the opportunity to have a soldier transferred to your own unit through the brigade's recruitment center, they demanded $8,000 and $30,000 for the chance to go home. According to him, there are no guarantees that the person won't be detained again. The Ukrainian ground forces responded and called on the author to provide details through official channels to initiate an investigation. Without an official request and evidence, the accusations remain subjective, the press center noted. They say that the command of the ground forces is fighting any attempts at corruption, aiming to eradicate this phenomenon and ensure transparency in the mobilization process. Military personnel or employees of the territorial recruitment centers involved in corruption are immediately dismissed. Information about detected cases of corruption is made public in order to restore public trust. Without uniforms and without body cameras. A new scandal in Odesa. There, in the city center, a young man was forcibly dragged into a van by men in civilian clothes. One soldier was with them. Whether these individuals were representatives of the Territorial Recruitment Center is currently unknown. The Odesa Territorial Center has not yet commented on the incident. Meanwhile, Maxim Mozhovenko, who became known for his solo protests against the arbitrariness of the Territorial Recruitment Center, has mysteriously ended up abroad. From there, he sent his regards to the State Border Guard Service. How he managed to escape is unknown. He himself says that he cut through barbed wire. Moreover, he even boasted on camera that he is wanted by the Territorial Recruitment Center.
I am wanted by Reserve Plus, sending my regards to the State Border Guard Service. I cut through 3 layers of barbed wire and ran through forests, fields, and poplar groves. By the way, I also organized several protests against the Territorial Recruitment Center, and the cops hassled me there. Hello to everyone who remembers me.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Russia is awash with weapons that are being illegally taken out from the front lines. The number of people convicted for such crimes has tripled. But that's just a drop in the ocean because far more undiscovered arms barons remain at large. Everything from pistols to grenade launchers is being smuggled out from the front lines of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Later, this weaponry is used for robberies and murders. Russian children will bring it to schools to settle scores with their principals and teachers. More on how Russia is being stuffed with illegal weapons. Coming up.
We must form the country's future influential elite.
After the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine, the number of criminal cases against Russian servicemen for illegal arms trafficking has increased, at least threefold.
Then it gets thrown off.
If in the year 2021, there were precisely 41 such instances or cases officially registered and documented, then by the year 2023, a mere 2 years later, their total number dramatically rose to a significant figure of 137, indicating a substantial increase in these specific occurrences. And here's a little lemon. And while Russia is stuffing itself with illegal weapons, officials are telling stories about imaginary feats of Russian soldiers to hide the truth.
Today, our guys, regardless of nationality or religion, are defending people's lives from the brown plague, just as their grandfathers and great-grandfathers did. State awards have been given to nearly 400,000 people, and more than 300 have become heroes of Russia.
But the truth about those who are supposedly meant to protect is very bitter. Murders upon returning home, robberies and blackmail. These heroes are bringing back from pistols to grenade launchers to their homes. Among them are those who voluntarily left part of it. Those who managed to escape are harder to find. For example, all the way to Bakhchisarai. An electric detonator and 600 rounds of ammunition were seized from Oleksiy Myerzlyakov, who was in Roshik.
On our part, we genuinely do everything possible to make sure our guys don't lack anything at all.
Both mobilized soldiers and career military personnel with experience end up in the dock. In the Voronezh region, a serviceman of the Akhmat Russia regiment, Bekan Masayev, was detained. A large arsenal was discovered in the trunk of his Toyota Land Cruiser. 12 Kalashnikov assault rifles, 5 foreign rifles, 6 machine guns, a sniper rifle, an underbarrel grenade launcher, 2 pistols, a Glock magazines, and over 3,000 rounds of ammunition. Masayev stated that the weapons were trophies and had been brought from the combat zone in Ukraine. Weapons and ammunition are often found among the personal belongings of military personnel. During inspections at train stations and airports, recently Deputy Gurulyov also stated that metal detectors at Sheremetyevo do not react to grenades and cartridges.
Given the elections, soldiers returning from the special military operation may bring a grenade or cartridges with them. Such an important security system, the frames are there, everything is visible. You know, we have the frames in place, but unfortunately they might not detect it.
For example, at Saratov airport, a military medic was detained for transporting 60 cartridges he had found in the trenches.
Kirillov meticulously counted them. He discovered a significant number of cartridges. He carefully kept these cartridges in a sturdy canvas bag and consistently carried them with him wherever he went, ensuring they were always close at hand. At Gagarin airport, security staff flagged the dangerous luggage and its owner was detained.
In July, a fighter from Akhmat, Adam Makarov, was also caught in Dagestan. 2 hand grenades, a fragmentation round for a grenade launcher, and about 50 cartridges were found in his car. The junior sergeant, who had participated in the war in Ukraine, on the contrary, was detained while returning from there. He was found to have 74 rounds for an automatic rifle, Kalashnikov. As a rule, servicemen claim that they forgot to report the trophies they found or to remove them from their personal belongings.
They're making us let our guard down, you understand? But we have to fight if you've taken on this task.
The arms market is an eternal business.
Spring of 2022. Judging by everything, even now and already about a year ago, this market isn't very noticeable, not very big, it's beneath the surface. That is to say, it is either completely hidden, located somewhere much deeper, or very closely and intricately intertwined with existing offline crime and various law enforcement agencies.
The cost of Kalashnikov assault rifles in Russia in the 25th year starts at 300,000 rubles. In 2022, they were sold for 52,000. Makarov pistol? In the 22nd year, it could be purchased for 23,000 rubles, and in the 25th for 350,000.
In order to buy an army, you would need to find some security forces who would be willing to sell it.
2 servicemen from the 71st Motor Rifle Division stole from the warehouse 3 assault rifles, over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and in addition, several grenades. After that, they sold the rifles to residents of a neighboring village for 15,000 rubles each. If in 2022 such cases were mostly considered in Moscow, the North Caucasus, and the Far East, then after 2022, about a quarter of all cases shifted to the border courts of Ukursk. The thing is, most servicemen are given suspended sentences or fines by the courts. He threatened his wife with a trophy pistol. A Makarov, he got 3.5 years suspended. Actual prison terms are given to servicemen in 40% of cases.
The recruitment pace has been quite decent and consistently steady, indicating a robust and effective process. As of the specific date of July 1st, a significant number, more than 210,000 individuals, have successfully joined various military units, demonstrating a substantial influx of new personnel into the armed forces.
The number of contract soldiers is increasing even, Medvedev, and along with that, the number of crimes is also rising. The return from Putin's war. Hundreds of thousands of people threaten Russia with a surge in crime.
52-year-old Lviv resident Mikhailo Stilnikov, who was detained on suspicion of murdering Member of Parliament Andriy Parubiy, held anti-Ukrainian views even before his son disappeared. The suspect appeared in Russian bloggers' chat roulettes, had a Telegram account, and an old VKontakte page. In a conversation with a Russian propagandist, he expressed doubts about the killings of civilians by occupiers in Bucha. The man also stated his desire to renounce Ukrainian citizenship and defended Stalin. He tried to contact Russians, offering valuable information, and was interested in the possibility of leaving Ukraine after his disappearance. Son. Footage has appeared online from a Russian drone that attacked the central square of Sumy. The regional administration building came under attack. The video of the strike was published by radio technology specialist and military serviceman Syrskyi callsign Flash. For a long time, this drone was mistakenly called Talmaz. The enemy refers to this UAV as the BM-35. The fuel crisis in Russia is worsening. Now, gas stations are empty even in Moscow and Saratov. Instead of 95-octane, drivers are forced to fill their tanks with 92-octane gasoline. Of course, that's if it's available. What's happening with gasoline at gas stations in Ukraine, and why is this only the beginning of problems for local drivers? More details in the report.
The war has reached the Kremlin. The number of cars on the roads in the Russian capital has sharply decreased. And that's because mornings for Muscovites now start not with coffee, but with a hunt for gasoline. In a country with unlimited oil reserves, A95 fuel has run out. Here.
That's how it is, friends. This is already the fourth Nefta Magistral gas station today where I've tried to fill up with 95-octane gasoline. No, there wasn't any at one of them.
The farther you get from the Russian capital, the worse the fuel situation becomes. In some places, they pour no more than 10 liters of 95 per person. In other regions, gasoline is only available with ration coupons.
Here it is, the gas station. I have become the happy owner of 32 liters of high quality, the highest quality, 92-octane gasoline. And here it is, the line. Here it goes. 95 octane is only available with coupons.
Russian motorists are massively writing denunciations. For example, a resident of Kamchatka filed a complaint with the police against gas station employees because they refused to sell him 60 liters of gasoline. The man stated that he owns a tourist base whose life support depends on gasoline generators. However, this did not affect the decision of the gas station staff.
Do you have a Diascat? No Diascat.
In some Russian cities, gas stations don't have anything other than 95th. Even 92 and diesel are disappearing from gas stations. The shortage immediately led to an increase in prices at gas stations in the Russian Federation. Every day, fuel is about 2 rubles more expensive.
Gasoline really did start getting more expensive sharply, and what's most unpleasant, began disappearing from gas stations.
Russian propaganda is trying to calm the panic among the population. Even if gasoline prices in the Russian Federation are rising, they're still much lower than in Europe. And you can't really argue with that. Despite the sharp price increase, 95-octane gasoline in Russia today costs on average 35 to 40 hryvnias per liter. However, this is only because the Kremlin compensates gas station owners for part of the fuel cost. In return, the latter are only required to keep the price at a certain level. Now, when gas stations have sharply raised their prices, the state may refuse them compensation, which would immediately cause a much more significant increase in retail fuel prices. Then the price of 95-octane gasoline in Russia will quickly equalize with the general European level.
To address the gasoline crisis, the government wants to reduce payments to oil companies under the so-called fuel damper.
This is compensation to them so that they don't raise gasoline prices, but they are still raising prices, which means the compensation will be paid less.
A former deputy minister of energy of the Russian Federation explains that no matter how much money the Kremlin pumps into its oil refineries, a fuel shortage in Russia is inevitable. The Ukrainian armed forces' strikes on oil refineries are to blame for everything. Ukrainian drones have successfully disabled between 20 to 25% of Russia's oil refining industry, which is crucial for the economy of a country that depends on oil and gas. The shutdown of oil refineries has already affected the occupiers' military logistics and in general the lives of most.
This situation directly impacts the daily lives and well-being of ordinary Russians who are often caught in the complexities of geopolitical events and economic shifts, experiencing the consequences firsthand in their communities and personal circumstances.
While the occupiers mindlessly launched their missiles and drones at peaceful Ukrainian cities targeting residential buildings, the armed forces of Ukraine carefully select their potential targets. Our drones strike specific oil refining infrastructure in Russia, so that the Kremlin feels it immediately.
And in fact, within direct drone range, there are many modernized oil refineries. That is, refineries with imported equipment. Yes, just try to replace even a single part there now.
This tactic allows the armed forces of Ukraine to put them out of commission. Just one small workshop at a huge oil refinery can halt the entire fuel production line. Without Western components, Russia simply cannot properly process its own oil.
Such installations are not only not made in Russia, but many of them aren't even made in China. Chinese oil refining. It also heavily depends on Western technologies. Many of these things are monopolized by American or German manufacturers, technological companies. That's why, due to the sanctions, Russia has lost access to this equipment.
This means that the old, reliable Soviet 76-octane gasoline will replace the now missing 95 and the currently scarce 92 at gas stations. This is low-quality, low-octane fuel, suitable only for old Soviet Zhiguli and ZIL vehicles.
A 15-year-old IT specialist has become the first saint of the new millennium. Pope Leo XIII has officially canonized the young Italian Carlo Acutis and named him the patron saint of youth and programmers. This boy from Milan was a computer prodigy. The boy died of leukemia in 2006, but it is known that he would spend hours every day praying before the Eucharist and limited video games to just 1 hour a week. He also created a website where he collected stories about Eucharistic miracles. The Vatican's historic decision was based on two incredible miracles. A boy from Brazil, who suffered from a rare pancreatic disease, was miraculously healed after praying to Carlo in 2013. And in 2022, a student from Florence who nearly died from a head injury made a full and unexpected recovery thanks to him as well. To recognize a miracle, the Vatican conducts independent medical examinations separate from the Church and analyzes the case to rule out any natural or scientific explanations. Theologians assess the connection with prayers addressed to the candidate for sainthood, and only after that does the Pope approve the miracle. 1 miracle is required for beatification, 2 for canonization. After his untimely death, the young teenager's body was reverently exhumed and then carefully placed within a transparent glass sarcophagus in the beloved hometown of St. Francis, in the historic and beautiful city of Assisi. He subsequently became a significant and deeply revered pilgrimage site for millions upon millions of devout Catholics from all corners of the globe, and now, with great honor, he has also been officially and formally canonized by the Church. See you next time.